Okay, for our last piece of the mythological puzzle here, I would like to provide you with a very specifically ethnographic example. So this will show you how anthropologists approach the study of mythology. So this is based on the work of an anthropologist named Claire Farrar, and I just recently looked it up. She passed away last year at a very old age, living happily in a retirement community in California. And she came up with this idea of the mythic present. She worked with the Mescalero Apache, collecting mythology. And in the process, so she sort of worked alongside traditional storytellers in this community and collected these stories with them. So that was one of her goals, is to collect stories. And I believe that her consultants were very happy to have her there to collect those stories. And you can read the book below, or you can read some of her other books. She has several books about her time with the Apache, and that was one of her goals, was to collect this mythology. To collect, she wrote an entire book about cosmology, about the stars and how the stars influence the spiritual life of the Apache that she was living with. So that was an interesting thing. She was collecting this information, but then she also had this theoretical approach that she was trying to take. What does this all mean? And how does it reflect the culture? So, living with the storytellers, what she discovered was, partly as a function of the language itself, but also as a function of the worldview, they don't think of mythology as happening in the past. It just happens. It's not really separated from everyday life. So throughout the day, people will make reference to, for instance, an example she talks about is the myth of the three who went together, which is a polygynous polygynous marriage that is represented in the stars. There's a constellation of the three who went together, and people will just mention them in conversation. Oh yeah, that reminds me of what the three who went together used to do, or what they do even, not even what they used to do. Who are the three who went together? Well, here's the story, and there's the stars up there to explain it. But to the listener who doesn't understand the worldview, we hear this as if it's happening now. And I thought, when I first heard this, which was many years ago, I thought to myself, this is really interesting, because what I was doing was collecting what we were calling at the time myth history in Carbondale, Illinois. The way that people understood the past, and specifically there was a sort of a time of turmoil, a social drama, if you will, in the 1970s, with the Vietnam War, lots of things going on that involved what's remembered now as the Carbondale riot. And I went around and I interviewed people about this, and what I discovered is they really don't know anything about it other than sort of how they've internalized it and made it part of their own story. And they talk about it as if they were there, even though they weren't there. And so I found this really interesting when I came across this idea of the mythic present. It's not quite the same thing, but it's the idea that mythology is not something that's out there from the past. It's not a relic of the past. It's something that's living inside of us. It's something that we draw on a daily basis to understand what's going on around us. So think about that for a little bit. The mythic present, the way that myth is present in everyday life. And then watch this film below. This film comes from a different community of Apache, but it still displays the mythic present. And so the first thing I'll tell you is it's an old film. It is the film itself is a relic of a time gone past, and that time is 1985. And in 1985, it was a very cutting edge thing to make an independent film on videotape. I know it sounds kind of silly now as we make independent films I'm making one right now, right? We make it on a daily basis, but it was a big thing back then. And this was one of the first examples I ever came across in filmmaking of actual self-representation by indigenous groups. Let us tell you our own story. So this film was partly made for students like you, but it was also made for people who live there at White Mountain Apache, children who live there, to learn their history and to learn their mythology, and also to sort of, it's a bit of an after school special. It's don't do drugs and don't fight in gangs and don't steal. So it serves all of those social functions, and it also sort of serves this larger mythological function of bringing the past to the present. So I hope you can get through it. I will admit it is a kind of a silly old, as I said, a bit of an after school special, but it's a really great example of the mythic present, and it's also a really kind of a cool telling of this story of the Gone. And there's some links there that you can look up a little bit more about the Apache worldview and the Apache religion after or before you watch the film, or as you watch the film.